All right, folks. Good afternoon and welcome to AMGC Connect's webinar on marketing and communications for manufacturers. We might get started at this point with a bit of an introduction to AMGC. So AMGC is the peak body representing Australian manufacturing and manufacturers. We provide services and solutions to all things manufacturing, including advice to government, but also support services for yourselves as manufacturers. We have a growing network that consists of over 4,400 members that represent 220,000 Australians that are employed in manufacturing. We have programs that run across co-investment, support, collaboration events and networking opportunities, media research services, and a range of other things. But in this instance, as a participant in the Industry Growth Program, next slide please, you have access to the AMGC Connect program, which is offering one-to-one support, which is bespoke advice tailored to your business for specific challenges impacting your pathway to commercialization. And that can be anything from linking you to a manufacturer in your supply chain, access to expert advice, such as the two gentlemen that are joining us today, or preparing for other funding streams that are available around the country. Our one-to-few opportunities give you access to facilities and experts that may not otherwise happen, but you can also tap into the collective knowledge of your peers across the manufacturing ecosystem. These are small and intimate groups, and I'll outline some of these events at the end of today's webinar. Today is part of our one-to-many services, which are opportunities to engage with experts in their fields and give you a broad taste of what opportunities exist to grow your business through other pathways, and in this case, manufacturing and communications. We'll also have a range of other events that are targeting the one-to-many area, which I'll outline later. Thank you. Next slide. Today, however, we are joined by Mark Mathot and Grant Belcher from the Big Brand Theory, two gentlemen that have a raft of experience dealing with industrial manufacturing and consumer brands across the country. And they're here to give you a bit of a 101 on positioning your brand for growth and the importance of doing so early, and the opportunities that will exist for you as small to medium manufacturers and how you can really leverage your story to grow. So I won't go into too much detail because the two gentlemen have heaps of information to impart. So I'll now pass over to both Grant and Mark to get underway. Please remember, as we're going through the presentation, post your questions up in the Q&A box. We will attempt to get to all of them at the end of the webinar. If we don't, we'll come back to you directly via email. So without any further information from me, Grant and Mark, I'll hand over to you.
Great. Thank you, Tyson. Appreciate that introduction. Big thank you from Mark and I for this opportunity to talk to you, and really excited to see, leading up to this, just how popular this webinar is, which tells us plenty about the need to get some clarity around branding and how it can drive growth for Australia's high-tech sector and manufacturers. So a big thank you to AMGC, Tyson and his team, for organising this and giving us this opportunity to impart what we hope will be well-received wisdom. So to set the expectation, this is hopefully going to be zero nonsense and all evidence about how manufacturing brands can grow, and to hopefully convince you that brand growth isn't magic. There's quite a lot of marketing science and some damn good storytelling that goes into driving brand growth. And today we'll unpack exactly how that science and storytelling works. My personal introduction, I'm Grant Belcher. I'm co-founder and head of strategy for Big Brand Theory. Mark, would you like to introduce yourself, or leave that to your section of the presentation?
That's all right. I'll say good day. I'm Mark Mathot. I'm the co-founder and head of storytelling for Big Brand Theory.
Great. Thanks, Mark. So let's get into it shall we? And if we could have a look at the agenda. So, like any good production schedule in a factory, this is our little run sheet. And what we want to cover today in the session is brand growth as science, not as hopeful wishing and good luck. Identifying what we believe to be some of the big problems around why manufacturing brands don't grow, and unpacking some of the key principles which make them grow. And that's about being memorable, a couple of principles called mental and physical availability, as well as being able to spot and avoid some of the marketing and branding snake oil that is out there. Mark will have a good session on storytelling and how you can turn your stories into sales and revenue growth. That should be really interesting. And of course, we'll recap and talk about next steps, and there'll be the opportunity for Q&A towards the end. So let's get started and moving on to our first section here, I guess a bit of an introduction around why we're here. Just to kick off, a little bit of a stat, about 86% of Australian manufacturing revenue comes from companies that are older than 10 years, but only about 11% of those organisations or companies have actually refreshed their brand strategy in that time. That data comes from IBIS and is pretty recent. So the parallel here is you probably wouldn't run your CNC machine without really clear tolerances. So why run growth and marketing strategies without proven tolerances? The reason people do is because they don't believe there are any. Well, we're going to dispel that. So while we can't help manufacturers with some of the other burdens they face, particularly in Australia, like government compliance and costs and red tape, we can help you to tell better stories. And today is about the scientific and creative principles that maximize your chances of doing just that, and as well as ensuring those stories are noticed, remembered, and drive growth. So how are we going to do that? Big brand theory was created. I have a technical and IT background myself, and I was pretty frustrated with what passed for credible marketing. And so I set upon a career-long journey to bring more predictability and more scientific rigor to what was generally considered the art of branding and marketing. Fast forward a bunch of years and big brand theory was born. And within that, we've been influenced by some of the best marketing science in the world, which incidentally comes from Australia. So way back, well, not so way back, but in 2010, Professors Byron Sharp and Jenny Romaniak of the Ehrenberg Bass Institute, which is attached to the University of South Australia, published a body of work called, or a book called How Brands Grow, and it outlined everything marketers didn't know, but marketing science showed was true. And this pretty much has now become the seminal thinking in modern brand building globally. It's considered by everyone, including their critics now, to be the very best marketing science. So what we've done at Big Brand Theory is to take and distill those principles and apply them to manufacturing, industrial and tech sector in Australia, where a lot of our personal experience in helping brands to grow was formed. So we have a methodology called Ignite. I won't sort of pull that apart in excruciating detail, but it is an acronym, and it basically looks at how we can create memory structures in your audience's mind for your brand, how we can drive growth for your brand by penetrating new markets, how we can measure and optimize the perception of trust in your brand, how to make you distinctive, and using empirical evidence to drive everything that we do, everything we recommend, everything that you can optimize about your brand. So in short, if you can't measure it, you're gambling, you're not growing. Go to the next slide, please. So the big problem, there are a lot of myths in marketing, but a big one in our industry is this myth that we sell relationships, not brands. So many manufacturers rightfully pride themselves on repeat business, referrals, and developing those deep customer relationships. They believe brand is mostly just about logos and slogans. But in industrial and manufacturing sectors, people buy from people. Well, that's somewhat true, but the reality is relationships are certainly powerful, but they're not the starting point. Before a buyer ever gets to know you, they have to know about you. So you can't build a relationship with a brand that no one recalls, trusts, or understands. Well, I guess you can, but it's very difficult to scale that. I mean, certainly personal referrals and introductions are sort of a bedrock to a lot of businesses, but it's not a strategy to scale. So that leads us to, I guess, the science of recognition. Decades of research show that growth starts with a thing called mental availability. That's about being remembered in the right context. So when, for example, your customers' contracts are up, or if they have a problem that needs fixing, if your brand doesn't come to mind, the relationship can't even begin, or it certainly makes it a lot harder for you. So just a practical example of that. Even if people or businesses are referred to you, most of those buyers are going to Google you first, check your website, and try and seek some sort of proof that validates that referral that they were given. And this happens before they make contact. If you're indistinct or invisible, that door never opens, or not never opens, but it rarely opens. So for every successful referral that knocks on your door in the face of poor brand awareness and cut through, there's probably at least 3 or 4 other people that will never walk through your door. So I guess the key takeaway for manufacturers is branding's not the enemy of your relationships, it's a precondition for it. Make your brand memorable and trusted, then you'll earn the right to build those relationships. This is a very important initial principle. And that leads us to a marketing law, in fact, called the law of double jeopardy. No, it's not a game show, but what it means is smaller brands not only have fewer customers, they also have lower loyalty in that those buyers or customers come back less often. What they found was that there was an absolutely consistent correlation that the bigger the brand, bigger brands win because they're better known, because they're easier to recall, and show up more often in the buyer's memory and those channels. So that means the path to growth is more buyers, not just trying to lock in loyalty. So a lot of conventional wisdom says that invest your marketing effort into your existing buyers and treat them well, because the return on that will be greater than new customer acquisition. So this is one of the first principles that rocked the marketing world. Unfortunately, the long-term data says otherwise. What really happens is those loyal customers are just going to come to you anyway. So certainly you should look after them, but you're possibly spending money you don't need to on buying loyalty that already exists. That money will be much better served acquiring new audiences. So to use a bit of a car analogy here, loyalty programs is a little bit like polishing the chrome, but penetration is the bigger engine. So that was an eye-opening principle when we first discovered it. So what are some of the pitfalls that SMEs and small manufacturers and startups fall into? One is underinvesting in clear branding. Well, of course, I guess you might think we would say that, but we only say that because the evidence shows us. Australian manufacturers on average spend staggeringly low 0.6% of revenue on comms and branding versus the global average of 2%. That data comes from a Euromonitor report 2 years ago. Over-reliance, another pitfall is an over-reliance on those existing client or customer relationships. That law of double jeopardy again, that limits new market penetration. So the big takeaway there, do everything that you can to expand your reach into new audiences, and we'll explore ways to do that in a moment. Another pitfall is the value propositions are often very, very vague. It's failing to really communicate in a measurable way why customers should choose you. Simply saying high quality is meaningless. But if you say we build things to within 2 microns of tolerance, well, that pops because it's measurable. The human mind can build those memory structures to your brand if you give them tangible, specific, distinctive things to remember. So just avoid a lot of those vague value propositions in your marketing. Get specific. A couple of others on that messaging thing, that leads to messaging that's me too. You see your competitors or other manufacturers that might be bigger than you using certain expressions and employing certain tactics. You think, well, if they're bigger than me, they must know what they're doing. I'll just kind of copy them. So you'll see a lot of overused claims like the word innovative or solutions provider or partner of choice. That just makes you blend in. It certainly doesn't make you stand out. So the insight there that you can use, ask yourself honestly, can a competitor say the same thing that's currently written on your website? Honestly. And if they can, it's not distinctive enough. So they're just some of the SME pitfalls that a lot of people fall into, a lot of brands, a lot of manufacturers fall into in trying to address their marketing and brand challenges. So what does this mean? Relationships, just to summarize, relationships start after recognition, not before. So obscurity, not your competitors, is your biggest cost center. That's your biggest threat. And penetration beats persuasion every single quarter on your bottom line. Let's move to the next slide, please. So I just wanted to start to express some of these principles we're talking about into a little bit of a case study here. So for most of the last year, I was seconded to another marketing consultancy that needed my expertise in building out brand strategy and some AI offerings for them. And while I was there, I had the privilege of co-authoring or being the primary author in the Hunter Defence White Paper. And that's where we examined the spending patterns of a lot of SME manufacturers across Australia for the last 5 years, and that provided some incredible insights. And one of them was a case study of a company called Synab. And these guys are a perfect example of the principles we're talking about here today. So Synab, they were established back in 2013 as a company called Quadrant Global Services, but rebranded in 2019. So again, they had a technical name that was easily forgettable, and a more distinctive name was created. They were an Australian-owned advanced engineering SME, very tightly focused on the defence industry. So their core challenge was they needed to build a distinctive brand from scratch to launch this new ISR technology pod that they had. ISR, for the uninitiated, stands for Intelligence, Surveillance and Reconnaissance. So they were very focused on the military sector. So the goal was, how do we shift that narrow focus from military to broader applications for their ISR capability, and therefore opening new markets in emergency services or border security or disaster response. So the problem was, you have this engineering-led company needed to translate technical capability into clear, credible, market-facing brand messaging narratives. So what happened was brand positioning, new positioning was developed specifically for the defence sector, but also repositioned this Phoenix pod from this single-use technical product into what they call a multi-domain solution. So that linked, they used their defence capabilities to open up civilian market opportunities, and their brand messaging was absolutely essential at doing that. Audience then had to be segmented into and develop messaging for not just military and not even just the commercial sector, but messaging specific to emergency, border security, and so on. So all of this messaging and storytelling was developed, translated a lot of their complex engineering language and military spec language into more outcomes-focused messaging that bridged that tech to benefit gap. And this tech to benefit gap is what we see a lot in the technology and manufacturing space. You certainly want to be credible talking about your technology, but it also needs to be expressed in outcomes and benefit-oriented language as well, because that helps get you noticed and remembered. So the outcome of all of this, and it's in the white paper that we authored, is that this focus on distinctiveness of their brand and the mental availability of their brand means that we were able to reposition them and expand their market from the crowded defence tech space, and then dominating some of the civilian markets that they went after. And they've certainly grown pretty much when this rebrand and remessaging was relaunched and expressed on their website. New proposal opportunities, tender responses landed in their inboxes, and it was a very successful outcome for Synab. So they went from technical obscurity, where many manufacturers find themselves, to international opportunity, just by making their engineering story simple, memorable, and more market-driven. So remember, brand growth by design, not by accident. That's what we're about here today. So let's have a look at a couple of the principles that were applied to Synab that made the difference, that really are activators or drivers of brand growth. So if we go to the next slide, please. Thank you. Now, the first of two major principles I want to talk to you about. The first one is for your brand to be memorable. Specifically, mental availability is absolutely the foundation of growth for your brand. It's how easily, what it is, mental availability is how easily and often your brand comes to mind when a buyer faces a relevant situation, like needing a new supplier, solving a problem, or renewing a contract. For manufacturers, it means being the first brand that buyers remember at that critical moment when their equipment breaks or specs change or a big job's on the line. If you can't recall, or if they can't recall your name or your offer or what makes you unique, you're pretty much invisible, no matter how good your product is. So mental availability is not about loyalty, it's about those memory structures. Are you easy to recall when buyers are searching or comparing or choosing? It's a question for you. Are your colours, logo, and message instantly recognisable in your particular category? Remember, the key to memorability is a thing called distinctive brand assets. They're your colours, your logos, symbols, slogans. These things create mental shortcuts through a thing looking at the neuroscience of branding. What we want to do is develop a thing called semantic cues. That's that shortcut between, or that cue that is offered that your brain goes, I will remember that hook, file it away, and be able to recall it when I'm in the situation, buying situation, that then will be a prompt for your brand. So your brand assets have got to pass two tests, the fame and uniqueness tests. And being famous, unlike the Kardashians, or perhaps much like the Kardashians, it means that you're easily recognized. And unique is being strongly linked only to your brand. So we've got to find those things that are distinctive and are associated only to you. You can see on this slide, there's a couple of well-known brands there, just to illustrate the example of the principles that I'm talking. That particular yellow of cat, it's part of their trademark. The shape of that Volvo grille and its logo, it might be that very specific shade of green in a John Deere tractor. They are absolutely iconic brand assets that they would be foolish to mess with, because they're those semantic cues that people easily recognize and associate with your brand. So, look at the checklist for your brand. Is there opportunities for color, shape, typeface, tagline, even a sound? Your machine might have this quite iconic and distinctive sound. That can be part of your brand. That can be part of the marketing that is created to embed your logo or your brand into the minds of your customers. Could be the shape of a pack. So the practical examples, how the power of it is, you look at Volvo, they effectively own the concept of safety in motor cars, and they've spent decades building it. People, if you say safe car, Volvo's nearly always first to appear in people's minds, first to be recalled. And it's dangerous for competitors. If you lock that in, if that becomes yours, don't worry about competitors stealing it from you. Mercedes-Benz found this out the hard way in the very early 90s. They decided, hang on, why are we giving Volvo all of the cachet for being a safe car? We're Mercedes-Benz. We're the best engineered car on the planet. We pioneered certain safety features. Well, all of those things are true, but safety as a unifying concept wasn't synonymous to Mercedes-Benz. And a funny thing happened. The more Mercedes-Benz spent promoting their safety virtues, the more Volvo sales went up, because it just drove people to the brand that they associated mostly with safety. So Mercedes-Benz learned that lesson, and they retreated back to engineering as their brand ownership concept, which was successful for them. So there's a lesson there. Find a distinctive brand asset that you can own, that others can't take from you, and certainly don't take anyone else's, believing you can do it better. It's better to be first than it is to be better, is a principle that we adhere to. So ask yourself, how can you replicate similar ownership in your particular category? So the last point here on this slide is, I want to just briefly touch on a thing called memory hooks, or in marketing language, we call category entry points. This is the situation that triggers recall. for your brand. So when a customer is facing a buying situation and when equipment breaks, if a supplier underperforms, are they going to think of you? So a good exercise after today is write down 3 buying situations that you would love your brand to be first thought of when people encounter it. So to summarize this slide, your brand has the opportunity to live rent-free in your customer's memory. Make sure it's remembered clearly and distinctively. Distinctiveness is not about being different, it's about being unmistakable. If you're both, that's great, but be unmistakable. Brands are mental shortcuts. Hand your customer the shortcut key. Next slide, please. Great. And the other principle is availability. So memorability or memory and availability. These are 2 of the most powerful strategic principles that drive brand growth for manufacturers and startups. So we looked at mental availability in the last slide, which we'll remember. Mental is just how easily remembered you are in the buying moment. But physical availability, that means making it as easy as possible for buyers to find you, access you, and buy your product or services, wherever or whenever they need you. For manufacturers, it's not just about having stock on the shelf. It might be about being listed in the right directories and procurement platforms, or having a website that's up to date and credible and easy to navigate, where people can find the information that they're looking for. Ensure your LinkedIn page or executive profiles show up in search results. Have clear contact details and fast response times. Basically do an audit of every touch point of your business, of your brand, and whatever barrier you find that is put up between the customer and you is costing you business. Eliminate those barriers. Make your technical data, spec sheets, pricing readily available to legitimate buyers. It makes a huge difference. Availability wins. So some quick wins that are often overlooked. We were just talking about improving your LinkedIn visibility. It's a great channel to activate. If you don't have a lot of money to buy conventional media, you're in the startup stages, use the channels where your audiences are and work them and activate them. And Mark will touch more on the stories you tell on some of those channels in the next section. Request a CAD model. Think, for example, people might they need a stepping stone between, well, you appear to have the technical competency to do the thing that I want. What are offers? What are calls to action? What are different ways that you can assist them along that buyer's journey that helps you? So if you don't just compete with your competitors. You compete with inconvenience. In fact, I would argue that making your customers' lives inconvenient in trying to engage with you is a bigger threat than your competitors. Availability is your secret competitive advantage. Once you've got a distinctive brand, then make it easy for your customers to buy you. So because the easier you are to buy, the harder it is to ignore you. Okay, let's go on to the last slide for my section, is just having a look at some of the misconceptions and false marketing myths and things that exist that are commonly misunderstood by SMEs and manufacturers that I've spoken with. Firstly, and hopefully by this stage of our webinar, you'll realise that branding isn't just about hype and buzzwords or flashy graphics. It really is about building genuine commercial value. Real brand building for manufacturers means removing confusion and focusing on trust. Buyers need confidence that you can do what you promise every time and you can prove it. They need clarity. Your messaging, it's got to be simple, specific, easy to understand, no jargon, no smoke and mirrors. You need good recall for your brand. It's not about being the loudest, but about being the brand that comes to mind when it matters, at that buying moment, not weeks later. And availability, your information, people, your offer, they're easy to find and act on. No hoops to jump through, no barriers, no missing details. What works is measurable, repeatable, and proven by the world's best marketing science, not marketing myths or creative stunts. This stuff is grounded in science. So the goal is to make your brand buyable and trustworthy, not just good looking or famous for nothing. And that just sort of leads very briefly to trust. So one of our proprietary processes here at the Big Brand Theory is that we've got some published work on the neuroscience of how brand trust works. So we've got a little trust formula that we've created. Actually, the real trust formula we've created is somewhat more complex than the one you have on your slide, but this is just a very top-level summary of it. So what trust really is just the consistency times the transparency of your brand times your ability to connect emotionally with your customer. Yes, I know you make technical widgets, but emotional connection is as powerful in manufacturing as it is in selling a box of chocolates on Valentine's Day. It's a different sort of emotion, but it's there. And then you divide all of that by a thing called recovery. So consistency is, for example, you apply ISO 9001 on every touch point of the product that you make. Transparency might be display real lead times for your product that you're making. Emotional connection, show us profiles of the welders or fabricators that you employ on a website. Don't forget to humanize your technology, and Mark will show you how to do that with words in just a moment. And recovery is you divide all of that by how well you respond to problems or resolve issues or correct mistakes or how you restore trust after a negative experience. This is why everything is divided by that. If you have a very poor process of handling stuff-ups and owning your mistakes, you will destroy trust and it will be very hard to get them back. So some common pitfalls to round out my section on the principles and the science of how manufacturing brands and grow is generic slogans. Slogans like excellence in engineering or your partner in solutions. They sound safe. They might even be true, but they could belong to anyone in your industry. So therefore, it has no power for you. They fail the can a competitor claim this to test. And why does that hurt you? Because buyers can't recall what makes you special. They're not tangible proof. There's no mental hook there. So the fix is to anchor your messaging to specific or meaningful outcomes. So instead of saying high quality components, you might say, we use precision milled to 2 microns tolerance, guaranteed 5 years in corrosive environments. It's just an example, but it has far more power. It's measurable. So use numbers, timeframes, certifications, unique results, and then that's really powerful. Many manufacturers we see have very weak digital presence. So the pitfall, the website's out of date, it lacks testimonials, there's broken links. Also, all of that stuff erodes proof of your competency and capability. Where are the case studies? Where's the technical documentation? Where is the proof you know what you're doing? So 70% of buyers shortlist their suppliers digitally. So if you're not credible online, you're not credible, full stop. So get that website up to date with messaging that resonates, that is distinctive, is memorable, that tells a great story. And finally, which will be the segue to Mark, poor storytelling. And I won't dwell too much on this because that's Mark's whole area that he's going to talk to you about from his many, many years of being a great storyteller. But needless to say that with all of these scientific principles in place, let's say you're building your brand, you follow the journey that I've just taken you on, you make your brand distinctive, your claims are measurable, you remove all of the obstacles to your brand, you then have everything in place. How are you going to tell your story? Let's build that narrative. So, finalize my section. Trust, it can't be faked. It's got to be engineered. It's really your track record times your transparency. And the worst branding is expensive fluff, but the best branding is affordable clarity and revenue growth. So on that, they're the principles, the best science distilled as simply as we can for manufacturers on what makes brands grow. Hopefully I've dispelled some myths for you and demonstrated some principles upon which consistent, predictable brand growth can occur. Let's now turn some of that into some stories. Thanks, Mark.
All right. Thanks, Grant. So you've sorted your brand position. You've done all the things that Grant has told you to do. Now, how do we turn that into a story? There are short stories and there are long stories. There are stories for your website. There are stories for your social channels. There are all sorts of versions of the story, but you've got to get the core story right, okay? Now, let's go to the next slide, please. We're all familiar with the idea of the elevator pitch, but I actually prefer talking about the barbecue pitch. Now, the elevator pitch we all understand. You're stuck in a lift with Bill Gates, you've got 60 seconds, and he has the ability to invest in your business. He can write you a check and he can change the course of your business's growth. What would you say to Bill? It's very important to actually get that right? Because you may not get that chance again. I'll get to the point about only having one chance at doing this. But think about the barbecue pitch. What are you going to say to your cousin's brother-in-law at a barbecue? Oh, what's your business, Fred? Well, getting that right might seem unimportant, but being able to explain what your business or your product is in fairly lay terms, with a minimum of jargon, a minimum of acronyms, no assumed knowledge or very little assumed knowledge will benefit you down the road. These short stories, these brand pitches require, these elevator pitches should be practiced. You're not going to get it right the first time. Try it out at the barbecue. If it doesn't quite land, try a different version. If that doesn't land, try a different version. Eventually, you'll come up with one that works in the majority of circumstances, the majority of the time. Next slide. From pitch to story, human beings are fundamentally storytellers. Nothing helps people get it better than a well-told story. Storytelling is deeply ingrained in all of our cultures. It's how we used to pass knowledge along before we had written language. We all understand instinctively the power of a story, the story that you tell at a dinner party that makes people laugh on a consistent basis, the story you tell at a pub that everybody likes hearing, even though they've heard it 100 times before. If you get the chance to tell your customer a story about your business or your product, make sure it's a good one. You might only get that one chance, or you're not going to get many good chances. You're not going to get many chances. What's a good brand story? Well, people like examples of how things work, how they've solved a problem, how they've met a customer's need. And whatever you say about your brand in storytelling, make sure that it reinforces the central proposition or propositions of your brand. Grant's talked to you about what you can own. what's yours and what you can and what territory you can occupy. Make sure that the story is really closely aligned to that. I'll give you a really simple example. What does Toyota stand for? I can tell you: quality, durability, and reliability. For decades now, Toyota has been telling stories about those three things. That's it. And they've done it consistently and frequently, and they own QDR. And no one else can get anywhere near them on that. Whatever the story you tell, make sure it reinforces the central proposition and that relentlessly reinforces your brand. Next slide. Sometimes you need help to find your brand story. Sometimes you need help to work out how you might tell it. Sometimes you need help to identify the case study, the customer solution, the development that's going on in your business that makes your brand sing. You're busy, you've got a lot going on, and sometimes those stories are right in front of you and you can't see them. We all understand the concept of, things hiding in plain sight. You can't see your story for the trees. I can't tell you how many times I've spoken to a client over the years, and we've spoken for a half an hour about all sorts of things, and almost the very last thing they tell me, because they have to ring off, is the thing that is the most important thing that I need to hear and is the one that we can turn into a story. Next slide. When you find that story, invest in writing it down. Invest in getting it written well. Invest in getting the quotes that go with it. If it's a customer, invest in getting the customer to agree to be quoted. Writing up these stories or these case studies, whatever you want to call them, is an investment that will repay you time and time again. A really practical example of this, and I'm going to be really quick because we're running out of time, is that some of you will, from time to time, take out an ad in a trade publication, which you probably should, right? And the editor of that publication or the salesperson from that publication will say to you, because you've taken out an ad, we'll give you an A4 page that you can put some content in, all the digital equivalent thereof. And you look around in a panic and you go, well, we don't have anything. What are we going to put in there? And then you cobble something together that sounds like a bit of brochure copy, is basically a version of what you've got on your website, but it isn't a yarn. It's not something that people want to read. It's not, and it looks like brochure copy. It reads like brochure copy, and it's a wasted opportunity. Have these stories ready on the shelf and ready to go. They maybe need a little tweak for that particular application, but the hard work is done. Next slide. In a very similar way, invest in good photographs. All great communication is essentially where the story meets the image, the great line and the great photograph. Hire a professional photographer. Get some decent photos taken that say what you want to say about your brand and about your product, right? Remember that great brand photos will typically have a person in them doing something that says what you want it to say. Next slide. When you're writing the story, spend an inordinate amount of time getting the headline and the first sentence right. Everybody is time poor and attention deficit. I've written here, you've got 10 seconds. You probably don't even have 10 seconds. You've probably got 2 seconds to grab people's attention. They're looking through their emails, they've seen your newsletter, they're going to flick through the headlines, and unless it's a cracker of a headline and the first sentence encourages them to read further after that headline, you've lost them and you've lost the opportunity. So spend some time getting that right. It's another version of getting the elevator pitch right, by the way. And so these simple sentences need refinement and they need practice until you get them right. Next slide. If you've got a brand, if you've got a business, you've got a website, you've got a LinkedIn profile, you've probably got an e-newsletter, you've got potentially other forms of social media, and you have to fill it with stuff. But don't fill it with rubbish. In marketing, quantity is not a quality. Quality is a quality. And you're better off sending out stuff less often and making it better, because if you spam your audience with garbage, they won't be your audience for very much longer. And remember that there is a lot of rubbish out there online, a lot of poorly written copy that is just filling space for the sake of filling space. Don't add to it. The way you make yourself distinctive is by having good quality content that's well written by human beings and not AI. Next slide. And so just to quickly recap, because we want to give you guys a few minutes for questions, memorability and availability drive growth. It's not just the loyalty of your customers. Trust is measurable, but you've got to do the engineering to get that trust. Stories should be simple. You need to avoid the jargon, avoid the acronyms, and they need to be tightly aligned with what your brand values are, what the thing that you can own. All right. I'm going to hand over to Tyson because he's going to moderate a couple of questions and we'll see if we can answer them in record time.
Thanks, Mart and Grant. And look, please, if anybody has any questions, pose them up in the Q&A box. We can probably run a slight moment over ourselves, but if you do have to leave the webinar, thank you for attending and we appreciate your time. We did have a comment made by Jeff Andrews as we were chatting away. And Grant, it was in relation to your comment with people mucking around with established brands, particularly in the case of a new CEO or marketing director coming in and wanting to put their stamp on it. I think the best example we can all cite, and I'll probably lead the answer, is Twitter versus X. Now, we all still tweet, right? But nobody X's. So, yes, Jeff, it can be very risky to go and muck around with an established brand.
Yeah, I would certainly agree with that. You're torching valuable equity that you've built. You've invested in assets that, if they're good assets, they're working to make your brand memorable and with high recall. If, on the other hand, you don't have distinctive brand assets, then it might be a great opportunity with an incoming new venture capitalist, new funding, new CEO. Sure, it really depends on what the current state of health of your brand is.
Absolutely.
The other thing to say on this, though, is that the business has changed, and sometimes you start off over here, and over a period of time, your business has moved over here, and the brand position that you had when you started out is no longer appropriate for where you're going.
That's a good point. But BP is a good example of a brand that transitioned from dirty old squashed dinosaur juice into Beyond Petroleum. And visually it took the iconic colours of BP but rendered them in a new and modern way that spoke more to renewable energy than old oil. So there are definitely ways to transition brands, and they should be, but you've got to decide what are the distinctive elements that you need to preserve that make you unique, that make you distinctive, that make you memorable. Brand assets should be refreshed. You shouldn't just lock them in forever. They will date, but it's knowing what's worth keeping and how to evolve it.
Yeah. And someone who is thinks the same as me, just put Jaguar up as an example of what not to do.
But, these are really good examples, guys.
But we've actually had a question from Brody, and it's a good one, and Brody will jump onto it now. So Brody has one brand operating across multiple market segments, and they've been considering establishing a breakout brand to help distinguish between their offerings. If they do that, how could they ensure that they're able to leverage the existing brand equity while also creating something new? So this is kind of like the brother, sister, cousin brands that Mark, Grant, and I are sort of familiar with.
Yeah, so what you're referring to there is a thing called the law of line extension, and tread carefully. Line extension only makes sense where the parent brand and what it stands for and what it means is relevant in the other sector that you're moving into. If you're branching into a completely unrelated or loosely related category, you will do that parent brand some damage. There was actually a good consumer brand years ago. It decided it was going to line extend, ice cream was going to line extend into ice cream for pets. And everyone thought, well, it's ice cream, it should be logical. But it didn't resonate in the minds of either audiences that was a sensible thing to do. So if your other business sector is very tightly related, and whatever your parent brand's stands for that is distinctive is also meaningful in that, then you can do it. Otherwise, I would caution against doing that and consider a dedicated brand or sub-brand that speaks to that. So we can help you with that. I'm more than happy to talk offline about your specific circumstances.
Great. Mark, while people consider whether they want to put another question in, we'll run a little bit past if time allows for both. You talked about making that first paragraph count, and I can think of an example because for those on the call, my background is comms as well. We had a manufacturer that was developing a means to affix wind turbine blades in an offshore environment. So your platform to run your crane on to get the blade onto the thing that's hundreds of meters above the sea level is bouncing around. Really complex thing to think about. And the first paragraph was, have you ever tried to thread a needle while jumping on a trampoline? And so straight away, people have this visual in their mind of trying to line up these two really small things. So, it's a long way of me saying I agree that first paragraph and that headline is really key. But also it turns what is a very unrelatable idea for many people into something they almost instantly go, I get it. Having that,
and I think Tyson, the other thing is that sometimes, and this is what I was getting to before, sometimes people have a really good story to tell about their brand, but they're buried it under corporate announcement bulldust. So Next Corporation is pleased to announce that it has entered into a joint venture with Y Corporation to develop something. Hang on, you've lost me already.
Yeah.
What have you done? We're investing some money into building a better widget. Right, we'll say that in the first paragraph. You can tell people who's involved in that further down. But if you don't get past that first sentence, that we're investing money into developing the world's first widget, no one's going to read any further.
Yeah.
And so corporate announcements are not stories.
Absolutely.
And they are to be avoided, except perhaps in the case of letting the stock exchange know what you're up to.
Yep. So just for those that are still with us, there's a couple of events up on the screen right now that are coming up for AMGC Connect. If you would like to join any of these, some of the invitations have already been issued. Others are hopefully going out as we speak. But please get in touch with your advisor if you wanted to tap into any of those events if you can't find the invitation for them. Also, if you were keen on exploring in more detail your brand, your comms efforts and other things, Grant and Mark are available through AMGC Connect to assist. And so please, again, get in touch with your advisor and get referred through to AMGC, and we'll be able to help you there. There aren't any questions further at this stage, so I'll just flick to the next slide. I should be able to do that. To reach out to us, it's just connect@amgc.org.au. The team in the purple boxes there are here to assist you. And then we have a range of supporting partners like the Big Brand Theory that are here to assist. I'd like to thank you all for joining us and taking the time out of your busy day. Hopefully you have learned something through the sage advice of both Grant and Mark. Both of them are extremely experienced in this sector and beyond. And I'd like to thank them both and a bit of a vote of thanks for their time. So please, also, if you are Sydney-based or planning to be at Industrial Transformation Australia at the end of July, Mark and Grant will be running a more in-depth workshop of which you are most welcome to join. That'll be on the 23rd of July, running from 9:30 till 11:30. Thank you again, gentlemen, and we look forward to our next webinar coming up soon. But in the meantime, we appreciate everything. Thank you.